So here's a fun fact you probably didn't know about me. I love Power Rangers. I've been a fan of Power Rangers ever since I was a little kid. There was a period of time that I stopped watching the TV show only because I got to a certain point where I thought I had to grow out of liking something like this. But as I grew older, I stopped caring about how people viewed me and decided to go back and enjoy the franchise for what it is. A campy, cheesy kids TV show. But hey, just because it was made for kids does not mean that it did not have any good story arcs. The franchise has been going on for 27 years and hasn't stopped, with around 27 seasons give or take, and 3 theatrical release films and a slew of video games. I could talk about Power Rangers honestly all day. Being such a big Power Rangers fan and my love for video games, I was really hoping one day we would actually get a decent Power Rangers game that fans of the franchise that around my age would enjoy. Now, the biggest thing about this franchise is that no matter what, in almost any scenario, it's always geared towards kids, which I understand because that is what the franchise was built off of. But fans like me that grew up with the franchise have matured and would like to have seen the franchise mature along with us. But I get why it didn't, so I'm not going to be completely upset about that. The most recent reboots of Power Rangers tried to be more mature, and while I really enjoyed the reboots, it did not make nearly as much money as it was supposed to, and the potential for the sequels were unfortunately stopped. However, since the acquisition from Hasbro, we are going to be getting another reboot along with a bunch of other new things down the pipeline, which I am very excited for. There was a mobile game that was released a few years ago called Power Rangers Legacy Wars, a basic side-scroller fighter with a bunch of heroes and villains from the show and even the most recent reboot. About 2 years later, the gaming developer Enway released this game that we are here to talk about, Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. When the trailer for this game came out, I was very nervous and excited at the same time. Excited because, hey, we're getting a new Power Rangers game, so that is always great. However, I was nervous because it looked almost identical to the mobile game, just ported for consoles and PC. When people raised their concerns about this, the developers tweeted out that this isn't a ported version of the mobile game, but an entirely new game that was inspired by Legacy Wars, but with completely new fighting mechanics. Did they live up to their word? Technically speaking, yes, this game feels entirely different compared to the mobile version. There are similarities like having the ability to swap out between fighters in a 3v3 match, but I don't want to keep comparing this game to the mobile version. I want to be able to review this game on its own merits. So what do I think about Power Rangers Battle for the Grid? Well, clearly as a Power Rangers fan, I really like it. However, if you are not a fan of the franchise, then I think it goes without saying that you are probably not going to enjoy this game as much. The fighting mechanics are pretty damn fun, but don't expect Dragon Ball FighterZ kind of mechanics. It ain't that deep. They are pretty simple, but you can chain some pretty good combos really well together, and the fighting is pretty fluid. The controls don't feel stiff, and every fighter is as unique in their own way of fighting. So let's talk about the fighters for a second. When the game first launched, it had a laughable list of fighters at first. Starting off with a list of about 12 fighters when the game launched. This was a sorry amount of fighters for a game in my opinion, at least for Power Rangers, because holy hell, are there a crap load of characters you can pull from this universe to use in a roster like this. And obviously you can't have all the fighters be Power Rangers because you have to have some variety, so they added characters like Goldar in there, which dear god do I hate fighting as Goldar. Typically, I don't ever like playing as big Broly sized characters to begin with, so I guess to everyone's preference. It just wasn't for me. Just like what they did with the yellow Mighty Morphin Power Ranger, giving her some big ass dragon armor to fight in. Now, you clearly got to have some classics in there like Kimberly, Trini, a different version of Zack, and obviously Jason and Tommy, Team Tommy. It really bothers me that they couldn't even finish the team by adding in Billy, even though they did add the reboot Billy in here, which don't get me wrong, I really like this character from the reboots, but if you were going to make a video game of Power Rangers, you got to have the original 6 in there, which they almost were. They were at the 1 yard line, but fumbled there. What also bothers me, which I don't get me wrong, I get that this is essentially a new character and it is supposed to be different, but I just find it funny that out of the first 12 characters that came with this game, that 2 of them were Tommy. I just think that's funny, but at least they both had different fighting sets. I'll get back to how I feel about the fighters in a bit, but I do want to talk about the story as well. So the campaign is based off of the newly made comic book series with Tommy and a different dimension where he never turned good after being under Rita's spell. The story is pretty good for Power Ranger standards. They actually use the words kill in this game, which might not be shocking to a lot of people, but if you're a fan of the Power Rangers show, you know that they never use the words kill. It's always destroyed. So it's a different tune for Power Rangers using that kind of language. Listen, it sounds dumb, but as a fan of the franchise, it's just different for me, okay? So the story makes you go through 3 acts, with each act having a set of chapters to go through. The cutscenes for the game are drawn out and have voiceover work from a lot of actors I have no idea about, and clearly they got Jason David Frank back to voice Tommy. They did get Austin St. John, who plays Jason, to voice his character once again, but I think he only voiced the intro and fighting sounds for when you play as him as a fighter. But I don't think he did any of the voiceover work in the cutscenes. I know there was a lot of behind the scenes beef between Jason David Frank and Austin St. John a long time ago, and I don't know if they ever really settled their differences because you never see them both together at a Comic-Con. So, which is why I feel like Austin St. John didn't do his dialogue for the actual campaign, because maybe Jason David Frank said something about that happening. I have nothing to back this up with. I am just clearly speculating here, so take it with a huge grain of salt. But moving on, the actual story is fine, but the fighting it forces you to do is so repetitive. Like, dear God, does it get old really fast. This is why I have such an issue with the small roster of fighters, because they decide to do a bunch of fights in the story, but you just end up fighting the same characters over and over and over again, just in slightly different scenarios. Like, I can't count how many times I fought Goldar. Holy shit. The story's okay, but the fighting you have to do to finish it is bad. No way am I going to go through this story twice. At the end of the day, however, if you really are a big fan of Power Rangers like I am, you will enjoy this game. I really wouldn't recommend it to anyone outside of the fan base, honestly. There is an option as well to fight people online, which I think is also very fun. I only did 2 matches because I never really like to face people online in fighting games because I'm just afraid of getting my ass whipped by people who play this game all day long. Like this fight where I'm a literal level 0 versus a level 75. If you want to know how that went, well, I'll leave an end card at the end of this video for you to watch. They are slowly expanding the roster of this game with future DLC, which I like because they have characters like Jennifer from Time Force, and then you have like the Gold Zeo Ranger. I'm not sure if he was a part of the original 12, I'm not entirely sure, but then you have like the Quantum Ranger, the Shadow Ranger from SPD. I think it's a really good roster that they're adding to the game, but I really would have liked to see this been at the launch with these newer fighters, but whatever. So yeah, guys, I would definitely recommend it if you're a fan of Power Rangers, but if you're not, then I probably would just pass on it. But hey, give it a try if you are interested. You know, always try out new games. But guys, my name is Pedro Ordonez, also known as Gamelight7. Please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up. Do whatever you guys can to support this channel. And let me know what you guys would like to see me review next time. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace out.